I had spent months writing a novel, my dream project. When I printed the first draft, I left it on the table to share with my husband. His mother found it first. The next morning, she said, "I skimmed your little book. Maybe write something people would actually care about." My husband said, "She's just blunt." 2 months later, my plot showed up in a local magazine. Same characters, same title. Her name was on the byline. I'm 38 years old, and this happened just 6 months ago in Fort Collins, Colorado. My name is Jenna. I work in admin at a university, but my real dream has always been writing. Not just for fun. I've wanted to write a novel since I was a teenager. It took years before I had the courage to try. For the last 2.5 years, I've been working on my first book. Late nights, weekends, lunch breaks, I chipped away at it word by word. It was fiction but personal. Not my exact life, but close in all the ways that mattered. It was about a woman in a small Colorado town who finds out her sister and her ex-boyfriend conspired to ruin her business. The story was about betrayal, public shame, and finding power again after the people closest to you destroy your world. I called it The Things We Bury. That title meant a lot to me. So when I finished the first draft, 217 pages, I printed it out at the UPS store. Thick stack of paper. I held it on the drive home like it was a baby. When I got home, I laid it right in the center of our kitchen table with a sticky note that said, "Please read tonight." I finally finished. I wanted Greg, my husband of 6 years, to be the first to read it. He knew how much time I'd spent on it. I thought maybe he'd be proud. That night, he was working late. I went to bed early, thinking he'd come home, see the note, and start reading. I imagined waking up to him with a huge smile, telling me how impressed he was. Instead, I woke up at 7 a.m. to the sound of someone making coffee in the kitchen. I walked out in my pajamas and saw Margaret, Greg's mom, standing at the counter, flipping through my manuscript. She didn't live with us, but she had a key. She used it often. Greg always said it was just how she was. She's old school, likes to stop by. I never liked it, but he brushed it off. That morning, she didn't even say good morning. When I walked in, she said, without looking up, "I skimmed your little book. Maybe try writing something people actually care about." My mouth opened, but I couldn't speak. She turned a page like she was flipping through junk mail. My chest felt like it was caving in. "You read it?" I finally managed. "Sure," she said. It was out. I was shaking. "That wasn't for you." She finally looked up. "Oh, relax. It's not like it's war and peace." Greg walked in right then, all casual. He kissed her on the cheek, said good morning, grabbed a coffee mug. "Your mom read my manuscript," I told him, trying to keep my voice steady. He looked at the table. "Oh, yeah." She didn't ask. Greg just shrugged. "She's blunt, babe. You know how she is." "No." She violated my privacy. "That's not blunt." He poured coffee like we were discussing the weather. "It's not a big deal. You left it out." I'm sure she didn't mean anything. I went upstairs, shut the door, and cried. That was the first time I felt like I'd made a huge mistake marrying him. Still, I didn't fight. I didn't make a scene. I told myself to just finish polishing the manuscript and move on. I didn't even touch it for a while after that. Her words sat in my head like rot. Little book. Maybe write something people care about. But 2 months later, the universe punched me in the gut again. I stopped by King Soopers after work to grab dinner stuff. On the way out, I passed the local publications rack. Something caught my eye, Front Range Voice, a magazine that features Colorado writers. I picked it up out of habit. On page 12, I froze. The Things We Bury, by Margaret K. Bowen. My hands started to sweat. I flipped through the pages, so fast I tore one. It was my story. She hadn't even changed much. The town, the characters, the exact scene where the main character finds out she was betrayed. Word for word. She changed the sister's name and the ex's job title, but everything else was mine. She even used my title. Her name was printed right there in bold under the headline. No mention of me. No credit.
Noshcham.
I bought the magazine. I drove home shaking so bad, I almost ran a stop sign. I ran inside and laid it on the counter. Then I waited. When Greg walked in from work, I didn't say anything. I just pointed at it. He picked it up. Read the title. Open to the byline. I said, look at the author. He blinked. Wait, this is your story.
No.
It's hers now. He stood there like he couldn't wrap his brain around it. Maybe she just liked the idea? Maybe she thought she was helping. Helping. I couldn't breathe. Greg, I said. She stole my book. My words. My plot. My title.
She didn't ask. She didn't tell me.
She just put her name on it and sent it to a magazine. He didn't even look angry. Okay, but it's not like it's a national magazine, right? Maybe she just wanted to contribute. She probably thought you weren't going to do anything with it. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw something. Instead, I walked upstairs, packed a duffel bag, and left. But I didn't just leave the house. I started digging. Because I wanted the truth. I wanted proof. And I wanted payback. Didn't go to a friend's house or a hotel. I drove to my sister's place in Loveland. I hadn't seen her in a while, but when I showed up on her porch with a duffel bag and red eyes, she just opened the door and hugged me. No questions. She always knew when something serious had gone down. Over wine and frozen pizza, I told her everything. Margaret reading my manuscript without asking, Greg brushing it off, then seeing my own story in print under Margaret's name. My sister, Rachel, is a high school English teacher. She reads a lot. She also doesn't tolerate bullshit. Do you still have the printed draft? She asked. Yeah. At home. Top drawer in the hallway desk. She nodded. Then she's an idiot. What do you mean? If you still have the draft with the date on the printer receipt, your original file, and any emails or notes from when you were working on it, it's proof it's yours. She can't legally do that. It's copyright infringement, Jenna. I blinked. I hadn't even thought that far. I'd been too angry, too hurt. I looked at her. So, I can sue her? Rachel smirked. Or scare the hell out of her. Let's start there. The next morning, I called out of work and drove back to the house when I knew Greg would be gone. I still had a key. I walked in, grabbed the manuscript from the drawer, along with my old notebook full of notes and outlines, dates, character sketches, scraps of dialogue. I even pulled the USB drive I'd backed it up on. Then I took photos of the magazine spread next to the draft. Just in case. I was about to leave when I heard a noise behind me. Greg. He had come home early. What are you doing? He asked. He looked tired.
Confused.
Not sorry. Getting my work. The work your mother stole. He crossed his arms. You're blowing this way out of proportion. I stared at him. You let her steal from me. You let her mock me. You didn't protect me, Greg. You didn't even listen. I didn't think it mattered that much, he said. Something inside me snapped. Then you don't know me at all. I left. That was the last time I stood in that house. Back at Rachel's, I got to work. I researched copyright law. I found out that unpublished works are still protected as long as I can prove authorship. I had everything I needed. I called Front Range Voice and asked to speak to their editor. I was calm.
Direct.
I explained what happened, emailed proof, scans of the draft, file timestamps, and the USB's creation date, which predated their publication by months. The editor, a guy named Miles, was quiet for a long time after I finished talking. Can I ask you something? He finally said.
Sure.
Was the story based on a real event? Like personal experience? I hesitated.
Some of it.
He sighed. That explains the rawness. The version we got, well, it was missing something. Felt flat, but we liked the structure. My blood boiled. She'd stolen my skeleton but couldn't breathe life into it. He apologized. Profusely. Said they'd be issuing a retraction and removing her story from their website immediately. They wouldn't be working with her again. They also offered me a spot in the next issue, with full credit. I said yes. But I wasn't done. I sent Margaret an email. Short. Just the scanned images, the side-by-side comparison, and one sentence. You might want to lawyer up. That same night, Greg called me. I didn't answer. He texted, "She's freaking out."
She didn't mean it that way. Can we talk?
I ignored it. The next day, I got a call from Margaret. She left a voicemail, trying to sound calm, but you could hear the panic underneath. "Jenna, let's not turn this into something nasty. I was just inspired. You left it out. I assumed you were sharing it. I thought maybe you needed help getting it published. Look, this is just a misunderstanding. Call me." I didn't. Instead, I called a lawyer. Because now that I had her scared, I was going to make sure she paid for every word she stole. Hiring the lawyer was a turning point. His name was Colin Brower, a no-nonsense guy in his early 50s out of Boulder. He specialized in intellectual property and didn't talk down to me. After I sent him everything I had, my draft, the timestamps, the original notes, he called me back the same day. "She doesn't have a leg to stand on," he said. "You got the full timeline of creation, proof of authorship, and the publication admitted it was your story. If you want to press charges or sue for damages, we absolutely can. Or if you want to go the other way, we could hit her with a cease and desist, make her write a public apology, retract everything, and move on." I thought about it.
Really thought about it.
And then I told him, I want both. I want to make her sweat, and then I want to hit her where it really hurts. So we drafted the cease and desist, but instead of sending it immediately, Colin sent a formal letter to Front Range Voice requesting all emails and communication they'd had with Margaret during her submission process. What we got back almost made me throw my phone. She'd sent them an email claiming she'd written the piece years ago, but just recently revised it after helping a young writer workshop her draft. She claimed she'd worked closely with the author and was acting as a mentor. She even attached a note supposedly co-written with me. My name was at the bottom, forged. I didn't know whether to laugh or scream. I forwarded it to Colin. He called me right away. "We're past apologies. This is fraud. She forged your name. That makes it criminal." So we filed a report with the local sheriff. It wasn't the FBI or anything dramatic, but it was real. And she was served notice to appear for a formal response. Greg came to Rachel's house a week later. He looked terrible. Pale, disheveled. I hadn't seen him in over a month. He stood on the porch and said, "She's sick, Jenna." I folded my arms. "You're going to tell me she has cancer, right? Something to make me pity her." "She does have cancer," he said. "Stage 2 breast. She found out a few weeks ago." I didn't say anything. Not because I didn't feel anything, but because I couldn't trust myself to speak. She didn't mean to steal it. She panicked. She's been writing for years and never got anywhere. She saw how good your story was, and she got jealous. I looked him dead in the eyes. "So, she punished me by taking it? She wanted to be remembered for something," he said, like that made it better. "Greg, she forged my name. She pretended she was mentoring me. She lied to a publisher. Do you understand how insane that is?" He didn't answer. He just looked tired. Old even. Then he said, "She'll lose everything if you keep going." I shook my head. "You don't get it. I already lost everything. My home, my husband, my belief that I was safe in my own life. You let it happen. You didn't just stand by, you defended her." Greg looked down. I didn't know how to handle it. "Well," I said, "I do." He left without saying goodbye. A few days later, Margaret's lawyer reached out. She wanted to settle. Quietly. No admission of guilt, but full retraction, public apology, and a small payout. I refused. Instead, I leaked the story. Not to the news, not to social media. I sent it directly to the alumni office at CSU, where she used to work. Then to the local writing groups where she lectured. Then to a woman named Carla, who ran a blog for Colorado writers and had once featured Margaret in a spotlight interview. I didn't trash her. I just sent the facts, the side-by-side proof, the forged signature, the dates. Let people decide. And oh, did they decide. Margaret got dropped from the writing group board. She was disinvited from a regional panel. And I heard from an old coworker of hers that even her church asked her to step back from ministry responsibilities. Greg sent me one more message. You're really going to destroy her reputation? I didn't answer. Because he was wrong. She destroyed it herself. And I was just getting started. I didn't take the payout. Instead, I let my lawyer press forward. Margaret's name was now tied to plagiarism and forgery. Her apology came late, and only after the community turned on her. It wasn't even sincere. Just a cold, typed statement in front-range voice saying there was a misunderstanding and that credit should be attributed to Jenna L. She never used the word sorry. Never admitted she lied. Never owned up to forging my name. So I pushed for damages. We filed a civil suit for copyright infringement and fraud. We had everything: proof of authorship, the forged submission email, and even the editor's written statement admitting she had falsely claimed to be my mentor. Greg kept trying to reach out. He left voicemails, texts, even a handwritten letter at my sister's place. I didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. But then something happened I didn't expect. My story, the things we bury, got picked up. Not the version she stole.
Mine.
The original. The editor from Front Range Voice passed it along to a small indie publisher who specialized in debut authors. They read the whole manuscript and offered me a deal: editing, a print run, and digital release. Modest but real. I signed it. The same day the papers were filed against Margaret in Larimer County Court. 3 months later, we stood in the same room for the first time since it all began. Her in a dark green dress, looking thinner, older. Me in a simple black blazer. No makeup. I wanted her to see my real face when the judge read the ruling. She tried to speak to me before the hearing. Said she was sorry. That she'd been sick. That it was just one mistake. I said nothing. I let the silence sit. The judge awarded me damages, $28,000. A symbolic number more than anything. But it wasn't about money. It was the ruling that mattered. That piece of paper officially declared that she stole my work. That her name didn't belong on it. That it was mine. She had to pay the legal fees, issue a real, signed apology, approved by my lawyer, and was banned from submitting to several publications for at least 2 years. That part? That was negotiated behind the scenes, but it hit her where she lived. Greg tried to reach me again after the court date. He showed up outside my sister's place one night, drunk, holding the same copy of the manuscript I'd printed months ago. I read it, he said, voice slurred. It was good. I didn't know it was this good. I just stared at him. You read it now. He nodded, eyes glassy. You ever gonna forgive me? I said, you didn't just let her take it. You watched me fall apart, and you said nothing. You weren't confused, Greg. You were comfortable. Then I shut the door. My book released 3 months after that. Small run. Modest sales. But the reviews were strong, and I got a few speaking invites. A podcast host even did a full episode about plagiarism in the writing world and used my case as the example. They called it the Fort Collins theft. Margaret moved to Greeley to be closer to extended family, but really, it was to escape the stink. She lost most of her connections, and as far as I know, she hasn't published anything since. She still has cancer, but that's not my burden anymore. Greg and I officially divorced 4 months after court. No drama. No alimony. Just 2 signatures on a county form. I kept the house. Rachel helped me buy it back from him. He moved to an apartment in Denver. He tried one last time to apologize, said he woke up too late. He was right. We all made mistakes. Mine was trusting people who only saw me as a shadow. A helper. A stepping stone. But I didn't stay there. I turned the theft into something real. Something lasting. They say revenge doesn't fix things. But sometimes, it closes the book on people who never deserved to be in your story in the first place. And this time, I made damn sure the ending was mine.